Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we now look to move on and to continue in our audios that we have been releasing. And we move on to audio 4, where we will continue, inshallah, with Allah's permission, to speak about some of the issues that have occurred in our masjid, in our town, Masjid al-Salafi, Linford Road. And inshallah, then we will discuss further and bring some more details as to what actually caused the split between the two Salafi parties. And before we move on with this next part, then what we want to reiterate and to remind the listener with is, as mentioned previously in audio 1, that we did not intend to make this affair public and to address this affair in the public. We actually remained patient for a number of years. And as we will prove, inshallah, with audios to come, then we would actually show that we tried to make islah and to rectify the affairs behind the scenes, and behind closed doors, and in private. And it was actually only after the Reading Shura went public with attacks and slander upon the brothers, and then the Du'at came down for the conference a couple of years ago, and they threw their indirects, and then Abu Khadija last year came down and slandered many bold accusations against the brothers. And then more recently, just last month, lahmami continued the onslaught. And this was all done publicly on a public platform. And this is when we then decided to take the affair publicly ourselves, just to merely defend our honor and explain to the people exactly what happened. So moving on then, inshallah, we now intend to show the listener of even more sad cases of extreme harshness and negligence that took place at Masjid al-Salafi Reading and what came from the Reading Shura. Then no doubt we've already shown sufficient evidence of the harshness, a harshness as clear as the sun, and clear for the person whom Allah has guided and not blinded their sight with fanaticism. And from those evidences being the 19 points that the Shura are promoting to this day and are using as a proof for the harshness shown towards Abdurrahman. And these are the 19 points that Abu Hakim and Abu Khadija see as sufficient for them to conclude that the shiddah was perfectly placed. And alhamdulillah, we have clearly shown now that these points were harsh and extreme, and they were actually points that were full of nothing other than evil suspicion and lying and exaggeration and oppression and fanaticism. And I praise Allah and I thank Him for guiding me to be able to see the points for what they are and to guide me to recant from them and to free myself from them. And from the evidences that we have already provided that proves the harshness that we speak of was how we dealt with Abdullah from Croydon, a brother who we mentioned would come to our masjid, and he would pray with us, and he would play football with us, and he would attend the durus, and he would stand in Taraweeh, and he would break the fast with us, to the extent that I actually even remember on one occasion when he brought pizza and takeaway for the ikhwa in the masjid to break their fast. And I remember in that same year of Ramadan when Abdullah brought a whole bag of miswaks for the brothers who were fasting. Nonetheless, this brother, basically, he didn't believe that some of the evidences that was presented to him regarding Brixton Masjid, he didn't see it to be sufficient enough of a reason for him not to be able to go to the Masjid Brixton and to benefit from them. Bear in mind that he did not call to Brixton, and he did not try to force his opinion upon anybody or cause any fitna in our masjid. And bear in mind, he was a revert and a new Muslim. He'd been a Muslim for no longer than 3 years. Nonetheless, we still boycotted him and gave him the cold shoulder to the point and until he eventually left the masjid. I then did, after some time, ask Abu Zayd, did you boycott Abdullah? Why didn't you boycott Abdullah? And his response was that he, Abdullah, was in the lessons of Sharh Sunnah and he should know better. And this was the hujjah for Abu Zayd against Abdullah, and this was his nasiha. And from the evidences that we have previously shown that proves the harshness from the shura of Masjid al-Salafi was the boycotting towards our brother Yunus, a brother who would also come to our masjid, a brother who was also a revert and hadn't been Muslim for longer than 3 years, a brother whom likewise didn't see that the evidences presented to him regarding a masjid called Cumberland Road, he didn't see it to be enough and sufficient that would make him believe that he wasn't able to go to that masjid and to pray there and to benefit from them. Bear in mind also that he did not call to his belief, he did not call to any doubts, and nonetheless we still boycotted him and gave him the cold shoulder until he likewise eventually left the masjid. He, like Abdullah, also was not given any nasiha, and when asked regarding this, then Abu Zayd's excuse was the same, that he also was in the lessons of Sharh Sunnah and should know better. If this was not already sufficient enough evidence for harshness from the reading shura at Masjid al-Salafi, then unfortunately we have more examples and extreme cases. And from them cases was the sad and sickening case of our brother Rayhan. Rayhan is the brother that we mentioned previously, who was mentioned in the 19 points against Shima. And he tells us his story. And it goes as follows. He says that he thinks that it's important to make it clear that the first time that Rayhan ever heard of these 19 points was on the 10th of February 2019. So literally under a week ago. He says that this really concerns him, knowing that there was points being circulated concerning him for 4 to 5 years, whilst not knowing himself of these points, or even them being brought to him for rectification. And he said that what concerned him further was the fact that from these points, then one of the issues actually happened 2 years before the 19 points were even published. He says that the occurrence of no salams became very much visible throughout the periods of 2014 to 2016. And he can recall a number of times that the brothers wouldn't give him the salam. And it actually, he said, made him feel frozen out and disliked. He then went on to say that this period was a very low and confusing time in his life. At this point, he actually didn't know why the ikhwa wasn't giving him his rights of the salams, and eventually he contacted Abdurrahman Shima. Abdurrahman investigated the affair on his behalf. Still no answers were any clearer to him. So he said he went to see Yazid after Jummah. And a number of the ikhwa started to gather. So he would then openly question them on the spot, asking if they have a problem with him. Yazid protected them from answering, and he told Rayhan to go and speak to Abu Zayd, whom wasn't even in the country at this time. Rayhan says that I think it's important to understand that I was in a search for the problem for a long period of time, and I was being bounced around the houses for my truth. And with regards to him attending the Eid fair hosted by his Tahrir, then, and finding out about this after 5 years, that this was the reason for his treatment, then he actually says that to this day, he is unsure as to how this event got branded as a Hizb ut-Tahrir event. But nevertheless, he says that this event was not during the Eid period, but rather it was on a normal weekend. And during that time, he says that he had his own perfume business and he was invited to have his own stall and to sell his own products. And this event was strictly it was an open fun day and stalls and kid event. And it wasn't a day to promote any dawah organization or had anyone teaching of any kind. And he says that he attended and it was purely for business and strictly a commercial decision, nothing else. And he continues and says that once the brothers found out that he attended this event, then they advised him not to go, and it was put to rest. And it was discussed and resolved on the same day of the event, which was 2 years prior to the writing and the release of the 19 points. He then concludes by saying that why did not anyone come to advise me? And why did nobody come and speak to me? He says that if everyone knew that there was points and there was issues raised against him, then why did I have to run around Reading asking everyone for long periods of time before I knew anything? So, is there still no harshness, Abu Khadija? Is there still no harshness, Abu Hakim? Is there still no harshness, Abdullah lahmami? Are the affairs just personal, as you say, and hasad, as you say? And who truly are the ones whom have caused the splitting? And who truly are the ones who have destroyed our community? Moving on, another case that we will mention that shows the extreme harshness from the Reading Shura is the case of a brother by the name of Umar Abu Abdurrahman, who mentions that he moved back to Reading from Birmingham and he started going to Lidford Road Masjid with another brother who also moved from Birmingham. And they was going to the lessons and everything initially was okay. He did feel at the time that some of the ikhwa was a bit wary of him, as perhaps that maybe because they didn't know him. And on one occasion, he said that the brothers in the masjid were discussing refutations. So, as someone, he says, with limited knowledge, I asked them, what stance do we take on Sheikh Falah Ismail? And this question, he said, it wasn't answered, and it was brushed aside and left. He goes on to say that during this time, the other brother actually moved back to Birmingham, and he stopped coming to the masjid. And this then led to some of the brothers thinking that he was now going to Cumberland Road. And without any evidence, he was accused of being doubtful due to the question that he asked, and he was also accused of accompanying someone who was misguided. He says that I was then locked off by a few of the brothers who were advised to be careful of me. And another brother who he knew from Liverpool, called Abu Humaid, was also advised to be careful of him. And this actually came to light when he bumped into him at the conference in Birmingham, and he could tell that something was up, and he questioned him. He then says that due to the treatment that he received, that he felt was unjust, then he found it a trial to go to the masjid. So he stopped attending altogether. He says that as a brother who has love for the sunnah and he wants to be upon the correct path, then he says, I wanted to go back into the masjid and attend the durus, but I was unaware of the lesson times. So he says that I politely asked Yazid, what time are the lessons? And Yazid's response was same as before, without giving any details. He mentions that a few weeks after this, I saw Yazid again, to which I greeted him with Assalamu alaikum 3 times, and he blanked me each time. He then started a conversation with a non-Muslim. So I said to him, do you reply to a non-Muslim, but not to my greetings of salam? And this then led him, Yazid, to tell the non-Muslim to ignore me, and he shunned me away. SubhanAllah. Umar then concludes off his statement by saying that I was not advised once in person what my faults were, and nor did anyone provide me with any support to any defects that I may have had. He said, I turned to the Imam with trust, but instead I was considered doubtful and misguided due to asking a genuine question. So once again here we see the same pattern. Hasty boycotting with no nasiha. So we ask, still no harshness, Abu Hakim? Still no harshness, Abu Khadija? Is there still no harshness, Abdullah lahmami? Just personal vendettas and envy, you say? So we asked, who really caused the splitting in Reading and who really harmed the community? Then how about the testimony of Umaiyyah, our sister who says that after hearing of the harshness in the masjid, she says that she still attended the lessons, but gradually she started noticing that she herself was not welcome in the masjid. She mentions that at this point, she had not raised her concerns to anyone, but she figured that she was getting this treatment due to the concerns that her brother-in-law had mentioned to Abu Zayd regarding harshness in the masjid. At this point, I would mention that I am her brother-in-law. This is my sister-in-law. And she said that she tried to overlook it, and she went there for the sake of Allah. But eventually, she stopped attending the lessons when the Imam's wife started behaving in a disrespectful manner. She said that she stopped replying to my salams, and she treated me as if I was invisible. She mentioned that the atmosphere became very uncomfortable for me, and when I questioned regarding this hostility to one of the Imam's family member, I was blocked by the Imam's wife and was accused of being affected. So, still no harshness, Abu Hakim. Still no harshness, Abu Khadija. Abdullah, lahmami. Are the affairs, as you say, and just personal vendettas and brothers seeking fame? So who truly caused the split in Reading and who truly destroyed our community? Also adding to this harshness then, the lack of leadership and due care for the community only made things worse. And this fact is highlighted in a letter that was written by some parents to the masjid where they aired their concerns. And they wrote a letter after the masjid handed out a document, a warning against Abu Hafsa, Asif Khan. So these parents, then, they mention in this letter that as parents, they were impartial to what was going on, and that they felt that many questions were unanswered for them. They said, for what reason did the Quran class and Islamic studies collapse? They mentioned that their children had been attending the center since 2009, and the fees for the children's Quran class was paid in good faith that it would fulfill any wages and bills for the center. They go on to say that sadly over time they began to see a deterioration in the Quran school. The classes was often closed, and the Islamic studies that was previously taught by Isa, Abu Idris and Abdul Latif, and the children benefited greatly from, was taken off the weekly rota. And the parents were very frustrated, so they messaged Abu Zayd and Shahid, and they said that our requests were dismissed, and thereafter the signs of disinterest and disorganization began to show. They conclude by saying, we failed to see leadership of the betterment of the center and gradually witnessed the Quran class winding down. And with such sadness, our children who are upon the Salafi Aqidah were forced to enter the masajid from different schools of thought. And this is a horrible sign of failure and an injustice for the children of Reading. And this was written by the parents of Zayd and Ayyan, and the parents of Rayyan and Zaydan, and the parents of Muhammad, Umar, and Muhammad, Aman, and the parents of Elena and Ayyan, and the parents of Muhammad, Yunus and Zaina, and the parents of Adam and Isa, and the parents of Zahra, Iqra, Muhammad, Daniel and Zakaria, and the parents of Abdul Hakim, and Muhammad, Qasim, and Muhammad Yusuf and Malika, and the parents of Zishan. So still no concerns, Abu Hakim. Still no concerns, Abu Khadija, Abdullah lahmami. Just personal issues, you say, and brother seeking position. So who truly caused the split in Reading and shattered our community? Allah understand. And still, subhanallah, after this, then the Reading Shura actually had the nerve to release a statement saying that the masjid funds have decreased due to a smear campaign from a small group of individuals, being ourselves. But rather, what is clear to the listener and what is evident is that you have harmed the dawah with your own actions. And as the parents mentioned, you have failed your community. And in reality, then the brothers who are now labelled as the fitna makers and those who have caused splitting, then they are the ones who spoke out about this. And they are the ones who were trying to stop this. We went to Birmingham to see Abu Hakim, and we waited for 7 hours to speak to him due to issues and stories like this. And now apparently we are the criminals who are blameworthy. And still, it does not end here. We have more sisters showing their concerns with the masjid and the lack of leadership and responsibility. And they also write a letter where they say that we are writing to express our disappointment at the lack of support for Masjid al-Salafi 29 Lidford Road. They say that we have sought permission on several occasions to hold sittings in the masjid as a place for the sisters to get together. But we have been told to put our request to the masjid in writing. They go on to say that they are extremely frustrated, as Cumberland Road Masjid are extremely active in providing classes and events for reverts, but our own Salafi Masjid are failing to do the same. And we feel at present we are not able to make use of our masjid due to the unwelcoming attitude from certain individuals. And we can also add a similar story that has a similar theme. And then we know of our brother who used to live in Reading and moved to Birmingham by the name of Abdullah. And he once came back down to Reading to visit his family and friends. And he came with his wife and kids. And his wife thought that it would be a good idea to meet some of the sisters whom she hadn't seen for a while. And due to there being many sisters and many children, etc., then they thought that gathering at one house may be difficult. So they felt it would be a good idea to meet in the house of Allah. So the request was put to one of the wives of the shura member, and the response that she got back was no, as the masjid is not a place of gatherings. And bear in mind that at times Yazid would actually cook soup for some of the brothers, and they would gather and eat that soup in the masjid, which contradicts the excuse that was given to our sisters. So this is the type of tyrannical rule that caused the decline in the masjid. This is the type of behavior that caused many to feel unwelcomed and neglected. No doubt how true it is that the people of their town know their affairs best. How unfortunate it is that these types of stories and cries for help have been unanswered, and the oppressors have been left to continue in their oppression. Inshallah, we have been and will continue, with the permission of Allah, to be the voice for our community. The result of that so far has been abandonment and warning publicly. Walhamdulillah ala kulli hal. We will continue to expose the truth and let the people know what really took place. And we end here, and we'll soon move on to part 5, where we will discuss an audio that was released recently by Abu Hakim, and we will discuss and highlight the many errors therein, and also discuss what happened in the second meeting in Birmingham and bring some clarity, inshallah. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.